Welcome to the Executive Espresso podcast, a sharp and to-the-point leadership podcast with insights from some of Australia's top executives. On this episode, I'm joined by Jarrod Frazer, Executive Managing Director for Victoria at CBRE. He leads a team of over 600 people with 9 direct reports, and he's sharing his thoughts on leadership, correct mindset, and what it really takes to succeed. Enjoy. How have you become so successful in what you've done?
Well, thank you for saying that for a start, Verge. I don't necessarily look at it in that light. I mean, I'm really proud of the journey I've been on. I reflect on it that I've been really driven and motivated, and I love coming to work. So I think that's probably the first point for me is that when I go, I use the example of when I go on a holiday or go on a break, I'm looking forward to, I always try to stay in touch when I'm away, which is probably to my detriment. But I really just enjoy being here. I'm really proud of the business that I work for. And for the leaders, for that matter, that I work for. And yeah, I just enjoy what I'm doing. So to that end, that's probably the key. And I think that's without being cliched, that's an important piece. The other one is I've been really patient and not at the time. I was very impatient as you're going through, and I want to do this and I want to do this. And I've learned, particularly probably over the last couple of years, that it's actually been that patience around just do your job well, keep turning up. And we just spoke earlier about the post-COVID era and just sometimes just showing up is half the battle. So that for me is probably another piece that if you're just constantly doing a good job, it eventually gets noticed.
You mentioned the whole idea of throughout your life you've been motivated and you've been pretty driven.
Yeah.
I mean, what advice would you give to just employees and people coming up through the ranks around what that looks like? You mentioned patience.
Yeah.
Getting in, just getting it done.
Yeah.
But I mean, do you have to be motivated and driven to be a leader?
Oh, I'd probably separate that from, no, I don't think everybody wants to be a leader. I think everybody wants to be a leader in what they're doing. So to differentiate, there's the people lead perspective, obviously, and then there's the leader in your market. So for us, we've got leaders, market leaders across our business that are doing unbelievable things in the market, and they're all exceptional at what they do, but they don't want to lead people. So for me, is they set an example just by the way that they go about it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're great people managers either, and I'm sure you're well aware of that. and we've rushed people into being people managers when they just shouldn't be. And then they realise that, no, that's not for me, and they go back to doing what they want to do. So I think, there's two very distinct roles. Sometimes the challenge is financially how you make that work. That can you have a non-producer just leading a team? Because clearly they need to be adding value in other areas. But yeah, it's a very different skill set being a market leader as opposed to a people leader.
We see it happen so many times
Yeah.
where people that are very good at what they do, they get promoted to a people leadership role, but they might not have the characteristics to want to lead people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then all of a sudden it starts failing.
Yeah.
And then they become demotivated. And how do you identify who is potentially going to be a good people leader?
People who put others first is the first characteristic. And to that end, sometimes, Reg, we've got the incentive is wrong in terms of, as you know, the behaviour follows the incentive. So if we're only incentivizing or they're more heavily weighted to incentivize to their own personal fee right in our example, then they're going to gravitate towards looking after themselves and then potentially others. So it's incumbent on the business to provide a platform where they can succeed, yet they can watch their team succeed as well. But I mean, for me, the best people leaders, and we've got plenty of them, are putting their team's interests first and providing a platform for them to succeed. And then sometimes that's at their detriment. but eventually, when I say their detriment, it eventually pays off. I think. Yeah.
Many organizations have the values and the mission statement.
Yeah.
It's all up on the wall as you walk in, and all those good things.
Yep.
I could probably count on my hand the amount of people who could probably tell me what the values of their organization is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Even though it's on the wall as they walk in every day.
Yep.
So how do you now, as executive leader within this space, how do you make sure that both the value statement, the mission, the strategy is aligned, both from a business perspective, but also from a people perspective?
Yeah, it's the behaviour you walk past, isn't it?
It's fascinating. Yeah.
That you need to pick up on. I've been really lucky that we're in Victoria. We've got an unbelievably good team, and we've made a real effort over the last 2 years, and my predecessor was the same. That culture was our first priority, and sometimes that was at the expense of financial results. And we just felt that set us for a platform where our financial results would look after themselves. And we've carried that through. So what we've done is strategically recruited really good people to deliver a really strong culture. What we're trying to do is balance the fun. We want people to have fun at work and drive. And I often say we want to drive world-class standards. And our people want to work with the best people, but we want to have fun at the same time. Yeah.
You're mentioning recruiting, good people and good staff.
Yep.
Is there a specific trait that you look for in people and new hires?
Yeah. I was thinking about this the other day. A friend of mine who I've used as a mentor in many respects said to me when I was very early in my career that he only hired people that he was not necessarily that this would happen or play out, but that he was really happy to bring over to his house and introduce to his family for dinner. And I didn't understand that at the time, but I do now. And I don't know whether I agree completely with that, but I totally understand the sentiment around good people, and that good people take your business a long way. Now they've got to be able to clearly be capable in their role, and we've in our market there's generally 4 or 5 market leaders across each sector, and out of those you're just looking for the best person. I think. Yeah. And we don't always get it right, and there's times where there's times where we've second guessed ourselves around, actually he's not quite the cultural fit, but definitely, or she, but definitely the market leader. So do we back our leadership to get them into shape or to fit in with us rather than the other way around? And we've always made the decision not to go down that path. So I don't know, Verge. I mean, there's challenges, isn't there, that you need to sometimes take that risk. And as I said, back your culture to make that one individual fit in. But that's always the balancing act around our recruitment strategy. Yeah.
It's interesting because a lot of leaders globally, they talk about, you hire for the personality and the culture fit, and you can teach the hard skills.
Yeah.
Right. But it's really so industry dependent.
Yeah. Right? And for us, particularly in agency, that it's a slow burn. So I don't know, from the outside looking in, I don't know whether people think that everything happens really quickly. And in some markets it does. But I can guarantee you that our successful people here have toiled for years to succeed to where they have. And then some of them get there at an early age, but it doesn't mean that they haven't put in the yards for 5, 6, 7 years. Some deals that get a lot of headlines, and we obviously use it as a marketing tool. They take some of them take 2, 3 years. So whilst you see the end result, there's a lot that goes on.
Yeah. You mentioned a mentor.
Yes.
Earlier. Do you have 1, 2, 3, many?
Many. Yeah. And
was that a conscious effort for you to go out and seek?
No, it hasn't been. Okay. No, but it probably is for the time. Like I haven't had the same people that I go to for every situation. And that's evolved. It's even, we've got a mutual friend of ours who I would seek advice from regularly because he's in a similar sort of role to me, albeit in a much larger company. The likes of my family, clearly, my father has had has significant impact on some of that. He wouldn't know this, but he had a big impact when I was, I reflect on this because I've got going through that with my kids now, is that you think what your dad's saying is gospel as you're coming through those up to, to your early 20s, I suppose. And then you start to think, hey, what was I listening to him for? So, I mean, he had a significant impact. And then, as I said, Verge, there's different challenges that you face that probably is best described as you go to the person who you think is going to help you out of that particular scenario. So that's probably the way I've looked at it. I had a guy who was a friend, but very successful in business, who I always went to when I was in the very early part of my career. And that proved to be really helpful. So I think anybody, particularly in the early part of their career, if you don't have a mentor, you should be seeking one.
I get asked that all the time.
Yeah.
How do you even start?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Was there a process for you that you went through early on, or did you just
gravitated.
See people around the office?
Yeah. I didn't, and it was external to CBRE. I just gravitated to a person who I just liked the way it was. As I said, it was more on a social level initially. And then became someone who and I'd still call him now, to have a chat about different things. But like I said, Virgil, it might be I want advice from a financial perspective, or I want, advice around how to deal with a particular staff member. It might be, as I said, it might be a different person, but there's probably 3 or 4 people that I would go to. Yeah.
When looking at certain decision making within the organization,
Yep.
right, are you the type of person who is kind of reflective on it, or are you a 24-hour person, or is it straight on that moment in time and you make the decision?
Yeah, I've got to get better at that, because I'm very big on needing to solve a problem straight away.
Yeah.
And I can't. So the 24 hours is probably a good rule. And some examples for me are that if you wait 24 hours, it doesn't necessarily change. Like, you can actually make a better decision. And we spoke before about sometimes getting too hot-headed around a specific scenario, that you're making a decision that maybe just, that's how I feel at the moment. You can sometimes feel your blood boiling when I've just got to deal with this.
Yeah.
And that's probably selfish as much as anything, because you just want it off your mind and dealt with. We've got, I mentioned before around mentors, mine external to CBRE. They're great people within our business that know those scenarios that I can refer to really quickly. But there is, I mean, in my role, you want to be seen to be making decisions and being a person of action and dealing with conflict, and that's sort of what you're paid for. So I wouldn't let it go longer than 24 hours, but I only say that because, one, I want it dealt with, but two, it sometimes is better to wait even if it's a couple of hours, and dealing with it in a bit more of a clear state of mind.
I interviewed a chief risk officer at a big telco.
Yeah.
And she has a rule that if anyone comes and asks her for a decision right now, every single time it's no.
Yeah.
If they want a decision right now, it's no.
Yeah.
But if you want me to reflect on it and you want me to give you a good decision, it'll be tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good rule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure over, especially the last 5 or 6 years, dealing with so many different changing landscapes and environments, etc. How do you, especially being the executive leader of a large enough business with a fair amount of headcount and revenue targets, etc. I'm pretty sure there's been a couple of setbacks and some failures and projects that haven't been won. How do you reflect on those, in your personal capacity?
Yeah.
Because a lot of leaders sometimes take it really, really personal.
Yeah.
In those situations.
Yeah.
And how do you overcome them? How do you deal with them?
Yeah.
How do you face them?
Yeah. It's a great question. I don't know that you ever. I always disagree with I've never had any regrets, because of course you've got regrets of some things that you did and decisions you made. I absolutely used to take it personally, and reflect on things and not be able to sleep, and all of those things played out for me. And you're right. There's been decisions I've made that weren't the right decisions, and maybe because they were made too quickly or in a rash moment. So I think, I think for me, maybe as you get older, as you get more experienced, but maybe as your priorities change too. So I got to the stage where, through talking to, be it mentors or someone from a wellness perspective who I seek out, is that I centre everything around my family. So if something's affecting them, or it's a decision you make that is potentially affecting them, then fine, take it seriously, and take it to heart, and make sure that you rectify it. But you've also got to understand, and this is the way I look at it: is this decision going to impact people's lives, or is it something that you can move on from, fix with that person, particularly if it's impacted somebody who, whether it be on a professional level or personal level, is it something that you can move on from? Can you deal with it, and then you move on? So that's probably the way I look at it. That don't but as I said, from a work perspective, don't stew on it, because if you can deal with it and move on, then that's the best way to deal with it. Yeah.
I loved the philosophy of Richard Branson at the time, and I still do. I think he's a fantastically quirky chap.
Yep.
Is there anyone that you look up to in that sense, that whether you've read their books or you follow their philosophy or you try and emulate what they do?
I agree with you on him for a start. I always gravitate towards sport, rightly or wrongly. So I read a lot of sport books, and have in recent years, Verge, and this won't nail it down to one person, but in more recent years got very much into the power of the mind, and what impact that can have. So I do a lot of reading around that. I'm particularly fascinated by people who have got longevity in what they've been able to do. I'm actually listening to a podcast at the moment where Scott Pendlebury's talking about his consistency of just turning up, but for one, but also just the extra miles that he goes to, and the consistency of those things. So I've learned a lot from a sporting sense around leaders, and try to track some of their traits, and generally it's all pretty consistent around what they bring to the table.
It's interesting you mentioned the sports leaders. I was lucky enough many years ago, I met Sir Alex Ferguson. And in one of his talks, he said, CEOs of ASX and listed businesses, etc., they get assessed once a quarter, right? Depending on what the results are. Him and his team get assessed every single week, and sometimes 3 times a week if they're good, right? And they're playing everywhere. And it's just constant, whether it's media or fans, membership, the boards that they belong to, they've got to be on their top game every single week.
I don't mind that. Like we used to go run by a saying, what does the scoreboard show? That makes so for us, our scoreboard is very much around. Well, for me, it's around our engagement. So we measure our engagement annually. I think that's gone to every second year, but also clearly our financial result. So all the things you're doing around that still show, well, what's the scoreboard show? So what's your result? And we've got some ex-sports people in our business who always say, and they've got to say, just play well. So just
be
don't worry about,
consistent.
just be consistent and just deliver results. So no one cares about the detail if you're delivering. And that's so true. And it's from a sporting analogy, just play well. It's a good saying. Yeah.
Is there, I mean, all the books and stuff you've read and all the leaders that you follow in the sports, is there a characteristic or a trait that is quite common across those high performers?
I think it's consistency.
Yeah.
Oh, I genuinely do. And I learned
showing up
day
after day.
You know, Verge, I learned the best lesson from, I started doing a box. I got a 5:30, I got a membership to this boxing. I talk about it at work here a lot. And it's 5:30 and I try to go nearly every day.
Yeah.
But I became obsessed by, there were days where I just didn't want to go, right?
Yeah.
Or I'd landed at midnight the night before, but I had to go. It was just, it became ingrained in, and it wasn't about whether physically I was getting anything out of it. It was just this consistency of just got to keep going, because if I stop, I don't know what'll happen. You know, nothing would have, but and that's the same. You can relate. I could relate that to a lot of things from a work perspective, and a professional career, that the consistency of just keep on doing the same thing, eventually it pays off.
Yeah. So, are you a member of the 5 a.m. club then?
You
know, all these CEOs that are having ice baths at 4:30.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I started, and the guy that runs this boxing gym said to me, before you come, you've got to do an ice bath, and you won't know yourself. So the gym opens at 5:30. So I got in my pool. This was in the middle of June or July, and I think the pool would it be 10 degrees? So it's actually warmer than the ice bath. But I did it twice. So I did it, and then it was invigorating. When you get out, you feel great for hours, but I just couldn't do it. In terms of,
it is tough.
It got to, so it might have been the Tuesday, Wednesday. I got to the Thursday, I was like, I just can't do that. And it just takes your breath away. It hurts, and it's too challenging. I'd love to be able to ice bath. I'm not extreme about it. I just love feeling fit and healthy. It's just a sort of a bit of a, not a drug, but that sort of feeling. I just love it, and it just gives me clarity of mind. I only have, I certainly don't have any coffee after about 12 o'clock. Probably by about 9 o'clock, I've had 2 coffees, and that's it. But yeah, the feeling of just feeling well and healthy, I think, and we're going to focus on that here for our staff, because I just think it just brings the best version of yourself.
Yeah. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Jeff, well, I'm a bit of both. I find that I function best in the morning. So I'm definitely not a night owl. I'm asleep at 10 o'clock. The challenge around that is that I've got a nearly 15-year-old daughter who doesn't talk at all to us until it's about 9:30. So you want to talk to her and engage with her until as much as you can, but she doesn't like to speak to us until late at night, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm an early to bed.
Yeah, I think that's the toughest leadership journey anyone goes on, right? Is being
the parenting
a parent.
one. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
It's different for every organization, right? But for you guys, how do you encourage creative thinking and getting those best ideas and best solutions and those best outcomes for everybody?
Well, we just create forums that allow people. We hopefully allow people to share their voice. And the reality of that, Verge, is that we've just had a cadet start with us in the last couple of weeks, and we want to hear from her around. She's had a whole new different upbringing to what we had, and one that is going to be much better prepared for what the next 5 years looks like. So we want to ensure that the old days where we were putting our new staff in the corner, and particularly our young staff, we want to hear from them, and we want to know, what does the future look like for them? How do they see 3 years' time? We sometimes get caught up in, and by nature we need to, in what's the next deal and what's that pipeline look like. But we've also got to have an eye to what does 12 months look like for us, and what does the next 2 years look like. So that's probably my mindset's changed in the last 6 months around needing to broaden our horizons on embracing that.
Is there anything that you're doing to ensure that you're growing and developing as a leader?
Our business is amazing at providing us opportunities around learning and development. So there's various pathways for, and be it mentor programs, getting us exposed to other industry leaders, whether it be, as I said, whether it be a journey around AI. If I wanted to focus on anything specifically, that opportunity would be available to me through CBRE. To that end, Verge, I think our business has pivoted from meetings of just our staff to learning and development opportunities, and how do we provide our staff with the tools to win in the market. That's the way we're looking at it. Yeah.
You've given a lot of really interesting personal advice around your success through the years.
Yep.
If someone's listening to this and they are really keen to take that next people journey,
Yep.
right, in or that next step in that journey,
Yep.
what piece of advice would you give them
Yeah.
at that stage?
Yeah. I actually got asked this when I started in this role a couple of years ago. I reflect on that journey for me, and my advice is, without question, is the first and foremost is to be a good person. So the minute that you seem to be climbing the ladder at someone else's expense, or putting your interests, and I said it before, ahead of others, you're completely exposed. And it only needs to be the smallest thing. So I think that's always your starting point, is be a good person, put others' interests at least on par with your own. And and hopefully this is the way that I'm seen as our leader here in Victoria. Is I look at my role as being there to support the people who report to me, and our leaders across the business. Is how do I support them? How do I help them? How do I provide them with a platform for them to succeed and for them to win in the market? Because the reality is, if they're winning, then so am I. So that's effectively the way that I look at leadership. And again, it might be cliched, but I think you need to be seen to be proactive, that you've got a bias to action, but you're always putting your people's interests first. Then I don't think you can go wrong. Yeah.
To finish off on a little bit of fun, if you could invite, or if you had the opportunity to sit with anyone and have a bite to eat with them, anywhere in the world, even past and present, who would it be?
Well, can I say that would always? So I'm not into social climbing or any of that, but so it would always be those closest to me. So it'd always be family or close friends. But if it wasn't Verge, and I'd go down the sporting, sense. So I'm fascinated, and let's just keep it to his sporting achievements. The Tiger Woods. I grew up in that. The Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, that US sport. Now Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady. Those. So I'm always, and I always, like I talked to you about before, going down the mental path. I can't fathom some of the things that Tiger did purely from a mental perspective. The fact that he won so many tournaments when he was behind, or he led the way and never got caught. But I get nervous. I don't know whether you're a golfer. I get nervous when three people are watching me when I'm teeing off on that tee off on the first hole.
Yeah.
And having that many people watching, and knowing that they're watching him,
with millions watching at
home. Yeah. So that mental fortitude for me is fascinating. So I'd go down that sporting path, I think.
If you've enjoyed watching the conversation, don't forget to like and subscribe, because we've got some incredible leaders coming up on future episodes.